Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. Anyone, I want to ask this question first. Anyone affected by the storm, the wind, the rain that's going on right now? No? Okay. I just wanted to ask because I know I just got the phone with my mom and then she was telling me that it was really bad where she was. So I was just asking. Um, but good morning to everyone. How's everyone doing? First of all,
Good morning. Doing good.
good morning.
Very good, very good, very good.
Very,
Morning.
very good. Are you guys
Great.
ready for the conversation?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yes.
I want to say that I'm so happy to see you guys here another Saturday, and I don't take it for granted. So I'm thankful to see you guys here, and I am looking forward to this show to this topic, so we can dig a little bit deeper into the evolving roles of parenting beyond the nest. That's the title of this particular podcast. This is podcast number 7 for Hearts of Women. So this is our 7th podcast. And I pray that we continue to move forward and evolve and continue to be creative with the topics that we discuss that the people in our community are maybe on their hearts and minds. So thank you guys again for joining. We want to this is the Hearts of Women podcast, and we have our special guest, the Hearts of Men. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And just want to, Miss, I'm gonna let everyone just say their names, introduce themselves shortly, and then we're gonna go ahead and begin to start. And also make sure that we acknowledge our chat. Everyone who is listening, who is on different platforms. We have it live on LinkedIn, YouTube channels, Facebook, so you can see this particular podcast anywhere you're listening. And please join in on the conversation because we need your voice, and we couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much for joining us as well. Everyone in the chat, I wanted to go ahead and make sure that I speak to you guys before we go ahead and jump in and introduce our special guest today as well. Crystal, Adrian Artist, Nick D, James Samuel, and his divine appointment. If I forget anyone, please, jump in the chats and introduce yourself and let us know that you're here. Also, I wanted to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Well, I'll go ahead.
How y'all doing? My name is Dwayne Dwight. Go by the master. That is all.
Yeah,
Okay.
Bianca Jr., husband, father, and extreme hobbyist.
And poor man's Dr. Phil, always here to try to bring some type of encouragement
and hopefully not derail the conversation.
Please don't.
I think he already put in his disclaimer.
And ladies, just a brief introduction. Just let everybody know your name and and who you are, and so we can get started. We don't want to belabor it long. Miss Adrienne Walthour.
Adrienne Walthour, and I'm Chief.
Okay,
That's all.
that's it. That's all.
Lisa Dove Washington, and I'm excited about today, especially because a blended family of 7 children that are adults. This would be a perfect conversation.
And Miss Nodella.
Nodella Sacagawea Jordan. Yes. Always glad to be a part of our panel discussions. And I think that it's a timely discussion with the things that we're dealing with in society today. So I say, let's help our kids out.
And we want to do our disclaimer. Everyone is the expert of their own opinion and their own experiences and their own perspectives. So we are just sharing our perspective today, and we invite you to do the same. We are like-minded in podcasted, and we want to come together on one accord, and we have wholesome conversations. I'm just gonna say that. I'm gonna say it like that. But we're going to be talking about parenting. So I want to ask, my first question that I want to ask everyone is, as everyone I know, but Miss Adrienne, and I want to say to Miss Adrienne, your opinion is so valuable in these conversations. We need your perspective because you do add value to these discussions. And I know last time you were here, you were like, well, I don't know, if I can add value, but you do, and we appreciate you being here. So thank you. I just wanted to say that. But I wanted to ask the question in general for anyone who has adult children. Anyone have adult children? That'd be me. And and how we navigate the relationship with them. And so the first thing is I want to say to you, with your adult, or wanted to ask was, with your adult children, do you find the conversations difficult? Do you find that you are advising, mentoring, or giving them instructions for the most part when you interact with your children?
I'll start off by saying that first of all, my children, or my boys, I have 3. They're 19, they're 23, and the oldest is 29. All boys. The oldest one is married and has 2 daughters. So my interaction with them are all very different. A lot of the things that we talk about is different. My interaction with the oldest one, we talk about the kids. Last week we were having a conversation about finances and, how, we can come together to put aside something for the granddaughters, once they get older. My 23-year-old, he just PCS to New York. So we've been talking about, he has a girlfriend. So I'm not digging too much into the girlfriend stuff. I'm just kind of back here observing and kind of watching and seeing what's going on. They went to a couples retreat. So I was just like, okay, that's a good thing. At least they're thinking about, you know what I mean? Working on things as far as the relationship. So that's kind of how I viewed it. And then the 19-year-old, he literally is getting in today from Europe from a 9-month deployment. So our conversations have been few and far between, just because he hasn't had the ability and access to communicate a lot. So all the interactions are very different. How we speak and how we talk is very different. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the first question so far.
I'll
So
share.
for me,
Go ahead.
okay, well, I was just going to say, I haven't made it publicly known yet, but I am about to become a grandma again. I will be having a grandson. But one of the things that I, told my son specifically, so I have one girl and 2 boys, and my daughter is the oldest. But I told the boys, and guys, don't get offended, because I find in certain things that boys are a little more immature about. And I told them, I said, listen, don't go out here having all these kids by different women. And then, you want to scream and holler about, oh, child support is doing this, this, and this. Well, you chose to take the word of God literally and replenish the earth. So this is part of the responsibility of replenishing the earth. And so with that, I'm along the line of with the Uncle Junior, is that in their early years, that is when we're really supposed to give the most training. As the word says, train up a child in the way that he is to go, and when he's old, he won't depart. And so I did as much as I knew at the time to give them that training. And so at this point, it's like the training wheels have come off, and I'm just letting them ride this bicycle called life. They know I'm there for them when they need me. I try not to be too intrusive with my opinions. As a parent, I can be very opinionated. But I make sure, and I do reiterate from time to time, hey, if you need me, I'm here. I don't really feel that I operate from the space of mentor. I leave that for professionals, because my role is more so as a parent and as an advisor. And so that's kind of how I deal with my children. And they know what I stand for. So typically certain topics they will not come to me about, because they know how I stand. I refuse to change my stance, because that principle is based on the word of God. And we know we don't change the word of God. But I do appreciate those moments when they do have that confidence. They do come to me and say, hey, Ma, X, Y, and Z. And I just ultimately lean in on Holy Spirit to also further help me to give them the proper guidance or advice that they need.
Real quick, I realized I didn't really answer the question. So the question was kind of how I deal with them, advising, or kind of what role. So when I was listening to her, I was like, I ain't answered the question. So I find myself more in a building the relationship type role and having conversation role. So when at some point, if they want advice or whatever like that, I'm there to give it to them. Where the conversations we had 3 years ago, 4 years ago when they were in high school, they're not the same people anymore. So now I'm trying to build the relationship with the version of them and who they are right now. So that's my answer.
And I was going to share, I am the mom of 7 children, blended family. So there are 3 boys and 4 girls, aging from 20 up to 34. And like you all said, it's very different, especially because of the dynamic of being a blended family. So there's some conversations that are just more intense with the children that I've had versus my blended family, but they all are collectively very, involved in each other's lives. So it makes it easier for me to, I would say, advise more on their cue. So I try to stay out of things. And if they come to me, I'm available to have the conversation. If I start to feel that they're getting a little comfortable, I'll just kind of reiterate that, hey, you make your own decisions. We're here to support your decisions. But I try not to get into the, no, you shouldn't do that kind of thing. But they, and I'm in a stage now with the children, or I shouldn't say children, with the young people, where I am actually watching whatever we taught them as young kids and whatever we advised them on and guided them on. I'm actually watching it kind of manifest. And it's actually a wonderful thing to watch. My son, I've gained a daughter-in-law soon to be. and they go to church every Sunday. I said, young lady, you are part of this family. If you can get that boy in church every Sunday, you are a fan of mine. But I like the direction they're going in, and now I can see that they listen to us. And I think they watched us. So a lot of things they're getting from watching how we interact and how we've grown. And I think the fact that my husband and I have grown in our relationship kind of sets the example. So I kind of like what I'm seeing so far.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, real short, sweet, and to the point. I have 4, 2 girls, 2 boys. Ages range from 20 to 30. And so I can't be the same person to each of them based upon their stages in life. So whatever they need me to be at any given stage, that's who I am. So sometimes I'm an advisor, sometimes I'm actually that listening ear, sometimes I'm that person that they want to vent to, and sometimes that person that they want to vent to is about the person that they're venting to. Sometimes I'm that advisor, sometimes I am that mentor. It's whatever they need based upon whatever stage of life they're in. And I say it that way because even though I'm daddy, I'm not this cylinder type person. There's several facets to me, and as they learn those different facets, depending upon where they are, they want to tap into that. So my baby boy, he likes to talk about money. So a lot of our conversation is about money because he's the 20-year-old. He's in that stage of his life where he got to get the bag. To where my oldest daughter, she is in that stage to where she is trying to discover the meaning of life. So we have more, in my opinion, more profound conversations about the Bible and things of that nature. She just told me she did a social media purge because social media was kind of like infecting her mind, and she found herself getting depressed, looking at what other people are doing, and comparing that to where she is. And one of the things I shared with her, I say, you're getting their highlight reels, but you get the entirety of your life. So you're a parent, you're comparing what you're currently dealing with in your life to their highlight reels, and that's not a fair comparison. And so part of the things that she shared with me in conjunction with that is that she's reading more books. She's reading the Bible. She's reading other self-help books and things of that nature, and she wants to talk to me about them. So again, I think our roles are not just one. It has to be a varying type of role. Like Paul said, I became all things, right? So that's who we have to be as parents so that we can kind of usher them in the direction that they should go, kind of going back to what Sister Nodella said. So now, the teaching phase is done per se. Right now, we're more so in a more mentoring and guiding phase in their life.
Ooh, with each and every one of you, because I think that as a father, and my children range is 8 of them, not to one up you, Miss Lisa, but it's 8 of them, and it ranges from 35 to 18. So as like Coach said, I can't be the same with each and every one of them. But as father, I got to be able to wear each and every one of those hats. So sometimes I must be a mentor because I should be the trusted, experienced advisor. So when it's time for me to make sure something is done, it's not for me to do it. It's for me to say, hey, I've instilled this in you. So now let's see how we can make it come to fruition. And this is one of those things where for me, it's 8 children, 13 grandchildren. So now I'm not their parent, I'm your parent. So I help you become the parent that they can need, that they deserve. And I got a lot of mistakes behind me that I can say, hey, don't go down this road, or this is what happens when you go down this road. So those are some of the things, and I love what you guys said, and I'm ready for the conversation.
Ms. Adrian, did you want to add anything? No?
I don't have any children. I am the kid.
We'd like to hear from that perspective as well.
I am a bonus daughter. Both of my biological parents are deceased, but I have a really good relationship with my bonus dad. I call him my dad because he treats me just like the rest of his children. And, you know, we can sit and watch sports and fuss, and he can watch Westerns and I'll watch them with him. I don't know how I do that, but you know, we can talk on the phone, and he's an Army veteran, and he has not, he's forgotten at 83 years old that sometimes he's out of the military. And so the way he fathers me, it tends to leave me keeping the phone on speaker and across the room as if he's in the room with me, because that's just how he talks. But I love and appreciate the relationship I have with him. I have a wonderful relationship with my siblings, including his children from his other marriages and my mother's children. And so we're just all sisters when we're together, and it's really good. Big dynamic in the differences in our lives and our age. I guess I can share. His children range from 68 to 34. Yeah. So busy man, but we're all really, really close together. And he always says, there's too many women in here. I gotta go outside when we're all together, but we have a good time. We do. And I appreciate the relationship, again, him enveloping me into the set of his girls.
I saw that, Coach. I'm just gonna say I saw that, Coach.
Can I add something to the conversation? Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. So my mom watches these shows, right? My mom watches this. My mom watches Coach's Corner. My mom watches Hearts of Men on Friday night. So in my family, it's 4 generations. My mom is still alive. My father's not here. And I have 3 sons and 2 granddaughters. So my question to those who may still have a living parent is, do you see similarities in how you are with your parent versus how you are with your children? You know what I mean? Because we're talking about relationships, but we're all speaking from us being the parent. So I kind of want to get you guys' perspective from you being the child in this parenting beyond the nest conversation real quick, if that makes sense. And if it's not going to steer the conversation off topic.
I wanted to add as well, I guess, for the first question, then we can unpack the question that you're asking, right?
Okay.
For me, you know, I'm so thankful, and I have to be completely transparent here. This information or understanding is new to me, maybe 2 years or so, new to me. And so I'm learning as well how to be that advisor, because my position was always, even if she wasn't here, my daughter, I have 2 children, adult children, 25, 37. She's gonna be mad if I forget her age, but I would always try to parent her, right? She's gone out, have children, have her life, lives on her own. And so this was something that I had to learn to do. And it was so amazing learning, because I was studying the Word of God and learning and having these conversations. And there were different, you know, aspects of me getting to the point where I understood now that at this point, I've already had the opportunity for the children to be under my authority and teach them, right? Now they left the nest, and now they're under Christ's authority. And now they have to develop that relationship for themselves. I had to learn to be that advisor in that ear, because I did not know how to do that, you know, just being honest. And for them to know who I was as Lisa, not as just mom. Because now they're my brothers and sisters, and that's how I have to interact with them. And it's been very healthy. It's been helpful, because this dynamic includes your children seeing you as a person as well. Your adult children seeing you as a person. And as the mindset coach says, there's so many dynamics to an individual, and you can't, you know, of course, can't share those all with your adult children, but you know how to come and have a conversation with them. You know, to be for them the advisor when they need advice. You can give them some guidance and direction, and sometimes they don't want your advice. And guess what? You're not supposed to give it to them if they don't want it, because it's not going to help them make any different decision. If they decide I don't want it, my daughter told me I want to learn the hard way. I want to learn on my own. I don't want any advice. That's what she told me. Now she said that a few years ago. She didn't change her mind since then. But guess what I did? I allowed her to find out on her own. And so those are the things that I'm talking about, and it's helping me to learn and to have a better relationship with my adult children who are now I consider my brothers and sisters. Now, if we want to unpack the question that Uncle Junior asked, please. And then we're going to, after this round of thoughts or insights, we're going to put the first question up. Okay.
So let me make sure I understand your question. Godfrey, you said you asked, are there similarities between the way that we parent and the way that our living parents have parented us? Is that the question?
No, sir. It's almost it's almost like I want to kind of compare and transfer. What are your thoughts on how you are with your parent, right? Like right now, like by you being that child and how they're parenting or how they're advising or giving you information versus how you are with your children and how you're giving advice or structuring or trying to help them navigate their life. You know, kind of contrast just being in the two different positions at the same time.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I want to start off by setting a context for the answer. I am 51 years old. There is no more parenting that my mother does and my father does with me. There are conversations that we have. We have great interactions, right? Me and my mother have a standing appointment every Saturday morning to where we get on the phone and we just talk. It's not that she's giving me advice or anything of that nature. We're just talking to make sure that we have a healthy relationship. Me and my father, the same thing. We don't necessarily have a standing appointment. It's just whoever decides to pick up the phone first. So in that state of our relationship is totally different. Now, transition over to my children, and I can say, like, again, the ages of 20 and 30. So there's some things, and I think poor man's Dr. Phil touched it. There's some things in their life that they're going to go through. And kind of like Lisa said, you can choose to do it the easy way, or you can choose to do it the hard way. The choice is yours, right? However, the easy way you can get, I'm not saying I have the answer for your life, but I have an answer that can expedite the path of your life if we choose to have that conversation. So right now in this current day and age, based upon my 70-year-old parents and my 20 to 30-year-old children, it's totally different. There is no more parenting that they're going to do with me. They just call and find out what's going on, how am I doing, how the kids doing, all that other great stuff. With my kids, when they reach out to me, Dad, I got a question. Dad, can I talk to you for a second? Hey, Dad, what should I do when this happens? So it's a totally different dynamic. When I was their age, would I have liked to have that ability? Absolutely. But there's a lot of things that certain people don't know until they get a certain age, right? And you got to realize we're in two different eras of time. Our children have this thing called the internet, to where they can go and research. They can search to the bottom of the internet to get an answer. And I'm that type of person. Like, what have you done to research the answer to the question that you're looking for right now? Because I'm not saying I don't want to be an advisor, but I want you to be resourceful as well. So in our time frame back then, we didn't have the internet. We still had doggone flip phone and Palm Trails and all kind of things of that nature. And that was just coming into existence. So would I, as a 20-year-old man, have loved to, have gotten some of that advice? Sure. But at the end of the day, I think what you have to realize is that because mental health is more widely accepted thing today, for them, it was not. So were they necessarily open to sharing some of the things, some of the struggles, some of the challenges that they went through? Probably not. They probably were more embarrassed to share those things and to help us to understand that they struggled with it. It would have helped us, right? Because some of the things that we struggle with, we would have realized that it's probably more normal than it was abnormal, which we probably felt that way. So we felt we needed to keep it to ourselves and then just power through it, especially as a man, right? So that's kind of like my answer in a long-winded fashion. They're totally different. Even when you look at my kids, me being that age, it was still totally different. And I think that's going to be kind of like everybody's response, not trying to steal your thunder. But when you ask your children that same question when they turn 50, I believe their answer is going to be the same as well.
So I wanted to challenge it just a little bit, because I do see some similarities. I'll say in instances where my mother was a great communicator, and she she actually encouraged us to share our thoughts. I mean, we had boundaries on how we were going to share them. Don't get too sassy with me, but I'm allowing you a space to say how you feel. And I carried that on. So those are some similarities I see where I behaved that way with my daughter. And I mean, she took it to a whole another level. So we had to bring it back down, but it was a similarity with that. But I like the question because it made me think about how I interact with my mom being the child and her, the parent. And I do look to my mother for, similar to what Coach and everyone was saying, that I look for advice from her in areas that I know are her expertise. She was a chemist. She's into very natural remedies and things like that. So yeah, I'll pick up the phone in a minute, and maybe it's childlike, I don't know. But when it comes to, medication and things like that the doctor says you need to take, because I know my mother knows her stuff, I was like, I'm going to my mama. Like, Mom, what you think about this? So I still have that kind of connection with her, which I really value. And I think my daughter has picked that up with me. So I don't know whether that's parenting or advice or mentoring or what you would call it. But that's kind of how I see my mother, as a great resource for how I move, because to what Coach said, the questions are different. So as the children get older and they become young adults, and then they become married people, and their questions are different. So now I'm getting questions about spiritual questions, or what do you do with the bills, with this and that and the other. So it's a transition. So it's different questions because they are in different spaces in their lives. And when they get to my age, I think it'll change again, because my questions to my mother are very different than they used to be, because now I'm a married woman with a blended family. She never experienced that. So I'm actually teaching her some things about things that she never dealt with in life. So we're kind of still teaching each other about things we never got to experience. So all of that is a great thing to me, though. But that's kind of my experience as being the child in the scenario. But I love the question. It's great.
I think it's the cycle of life. And Uncle Junior, I'm glad you asked the question, because now in the stage with my children, I find myself parenting, leading more or less, because they're adults. So I got information that they need. While at the same time, my mother being elderly, I find myself parenting her, because now I got to check. Hey, did you take your medicine? Did you eat? Did you this? We got to make sure you pay your bills. We got to make sure. So it's more of I got to make sure of things with her because of the stage that she's in, rather than me listening to her lead and guide me. Now, the things that she can lead and guide is she can say how she can give family history. She can give things of that nature to where I can learn those things from her, but it's not too much learning that I will do from her. More or less, I will help lead and guide her. Whereas early on, it was her job to lead and guide me. And now it's my job to lead the children and continue to guide and mentor, and them doing the same thing with their children.
So your candle burning on both ends as a parent.
Yeah, my mama won't let me yet. She 82 and still like, I can do my own stuff. Don't y'all come over here asking me, tell me about when to take my medicine. So, Roland, I'm going to get there. But right now, she like, back off. I'm good.
So for me, both of my parents are deceased. They both have been deceased for 20 and 30 years. So they've been going a good while. But I can draw back to before both of their passings. And I'll never forget, after I had gotten married, I made it a point to stop by my parents' house every day for like 15 minutes just to check in on them and say, hey, do you need anything or anything like that? And I can remember not knowing that my father's time was coming to an end. I was supposed to have gone to church that night. I was supposed to sing. I was a part of a choir. And we got into this conversation of just kind of looking back over my childhood. And although as a child, I thought that they could have done things different. Of course, as children, we think we know better, right? But as I began to reflect on my childhood, and then I also looked at some of my classmates and some of my peers, the things that they had to live through, I realized my life wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I had a good number of classmates who grew up in foster care. I did not. I was fortunate and blessed to have both parents in the home my entire life. But we got into this conversation just, talking about some of the things that had taken place with the family. And, I told both of my parents I appreciated everything that they did for me, even though, again, even at the time as a child, I didn't like it, or because I really didn't understand their decision making. But I was able to share with both my parents. And again, not knowing 2 weeks later, my father would pass away. That I got that chance to share with him, that I appreciated everything he did. When I got pregnant with my daughter, he made sure that I finished school. He literally threatened me, honestly. But he made sure that I finished school. He made sure that I went to business school as I had wanted. So when I look at the key roles that he played in my life, and I say it that way because he was very instrumental in my life. He wasn't a father that was just in the home. But then when I compare it to my relationship with my daughter, I take some of those things that initially I didn't like or didn't agree with as a child, and I find myself kind of using that as a guideline, with my daughter. And I say my daughter because it was my daughter for 10 years first, and then the boys came afterwards. And so things that I didn't agree with that my parents did with me, I found myself doing it with my children. And sometimes it was okay. And then other times, I had to step back and I had to think about why was I doing it. So there are definitely some differences between my relationship with my parents and my relationship with my daughter. We had a very rough start, but as you can imagine, being the young parent that I was, that was kind of a given. But in these latter years, we both have become more intentional about the kind of relationship we wanted. And so in that, I had to get rid of some of my parents' teaching, because some of those teachings, as was shared, we have to look at, are they appropriate for that generation or even for that time? And so, it was just, now today, we just kind of, again, we're intentional about our relationship. We're intentional about how do we want our relationship to be as mother and daughter. And we just continue to work on it. We do hit our rough patches, but we work on it, we get through it, and we just kind of keep it going, because we recognize that we are all that we have. Again, I do have siblings, but just talking about our immediate family. So again, ultimately, there is a difference between my relationship and my parents and my relationship with my children, but also with my grandchildren as well.
Garfield, was that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when Adrienne, mentioned her situation, that's kind of made me think about some of those things too. So yeah, I appreciate all those different perspectives. I've always heard, especially the one that Roland talked about. So it was kind of interesting to actually hear it from a bird's eye view. So appreciate all y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that was gave you some more perspective. I think that the parent role, because of the generations that they came up in, the time that they were in, and the way that they parented us, there's so many of us that says, when I have children, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way. And so I think that there are some aspects that we can take from it, but for the most part, we have to continue to learn, to grow, and to learn how to, because our children are not us, so they're not replicates of us, and they didn't grow up in our environment, and they didn't have the experiences we did. So that's the process of us learning and teaching them from a place that can help them to grow and mature and be healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. I would, that would be my contribution to the to the question you asked. So we have not asked one question, but I would like for us to go to, because I think under the transitioning roles we've already answered question 1, so we can go to question 2 and put that question up. Because I think we did touch on this as well a little bit. How can we effectively communicate our support to our adult children without coming across as controlling or directive?
Well, for me, again, just to, reiterate a little bit, is that recognizing that my daughter is an adult, even though I said, listen, you can be 80 years old and I'm still living, you're still my child, but I do respect you as an adult. And sometimes it is a little difficult, especially with certain situations, like, in her way of how she envisioned her life, she's not obligated to tell me that, right? And so sometimes certain decisions I've seen her made, and I'm like, what were you thinking? Realizing that was not the best approach, right? So I had to rethink my approach on that, because it did cause friction. And so now, to this question is that I've been working, and probably as long as I live, I will always be working on effectively communicating with her, because to your point is that, and I shared in the first segment of this, is that we're both growing. As long as we're on this earth, we're both growing, we're both aging. And in that same vein, our learning should also be growing as well, giving us the ability to effectively communicate better. Like 5 years ago, our communication was not the best. So over the last 5 years, it was a matter of, are we going to remain at that point, or are we going to evolve? And so we both have worked on that. And so we're both able to effectively communicate with each other, even when it comes to those difficult discussions.
So I will share with my and my daughter and I used to have really difficult conversations, but I think now what I've done that seems to work is that I make sure I am clear on what role she wants me to play in a conversation. So are you asking me for advice? Are you just wanting me to listen? I actually do that with my mother as well. So it goes in both directions, but that has seemed to work for us, because I think I was interpreting and assuming and expecting certain things as soon as she opened her mouth, and I wasn't listening to the ask. So I usually kind of clarify, are you asking what my opinion is, or do you just need me to listen? And once she answers that, I kind of know how to move. So now we've kind of learned what that sounds like when she makes a phone call, my son as well. And I do that with my mother, because I found that we were having that struggle too, where I was calling to vent, but she was assuming I'm needing you to fix something. And that works in a lot of my interactions with people, but that's what seemed to have worked with my adult children and with my mom. So
we judge and we don't listen. No, I'm joking. First, and I like this question. First, by recognizing that they're adults. That's where I'm going to start at. A lot of us struggle because we still see them as our children, our little children. And so it's coming from an honest place. Like, we want the best for them. But by that same token, part of the best for them is me taking my hands off of them so that they can actually go through the learning curves that they're going to go through in their life. So first recognizing that they're adults, and then effectively communicating the best way I can, just like I do with any average adult, right? But there is one thing that differs between them and any other adult, is that I really care about the outcome of their life. But I have to separate the outcome of their life from what I want the outcome of their life to be. That's the degree of separation. So now when I can separate that, now I'm less directive and more supportive. I am supporting what it is that they want to do. I'm not driving the train. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. So now, in the midst of effectively communicating our support to our adult children, it's what the adult child wants to do with their life. And then I am here as a support system, not the support system. So again, going back to it, because we can't separate, we struggle with that separation. We want to be the support system, but you're not the support system. You are a support system. They have to figure that out in the midst, and as they're navigating this thing they call life for themselves. And in the midst of doing that, sometimes we got to recognize they may choose a support system that you would not have chosen. But here's the deal. That's your opinion based upon where you are now in your life. But what about when you were their age? What did your support system look like? I promise you, a lot of times when we go back and look, we may have made some decisions that were very similar to theirs, but theirs were probably at a higher elevation just simply because of the information that they have, because of what we poured into them, because of some of the ways that we tried to raise them. So that's kind of like where I stay at. Recognize that they're adults, and recognizing that it's their life and we are here to support their decisions.
How can we effectively communicate our support to our adult children without coming across as controlling or not directive? Or directive is by not coming across controlling and directive. When they bring something to you, hey mom, hey dad, look, I'm going through it with whoever, you know what I mean? And then now your response is, oh, you need to do this. Now you're coming off directive. You know, now you're trying to control what they do in their life. And yes, we may have the information, we may have the answer, but at the end of the day, it's for them to come up with their own answer. You know what I mean? It's not for us to be directive and trying to control their life. Like Coach said, we're a support system. We are a guide if they want to be guided down this journey from us. We are just a guide. We're not the only guide in their life. You know, they have mentors, they have books, they have YouTube channel, they have a lot of other great places where they can go and get information, you know, as they navigate their life. So I think one of the main things that we can do is not being controlling, not being directive, and being very careful and strategic about actually giving advice too, because sometimes that advice can be placed in that directive umbrella. So
I think that first and foremost, when you talk about adult children, and they have a level of independence because you taught them. So now you ask, you don't tell. You give examples. You say, have you thought about this? Or you make suggestions leading them to think about it to where it's their decision and not yours. And just be an active listener. Listen to what they're saying so that you're not already above it. You're in front of it. Okay, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. So now it's you're in charge and you're making the decisions. And now they back up and they get into child mode because they don't want to be disrespectful. They don't want to offend you. And rather doing things like that, you can just actively listen. And then the more that they talk, and I found this at work, the more that someone talks about something and doing something, they come up with their own ways of fixing the problem, their own ways of making sure it works out. And then you're just you're just there as an encourager, and there is someone to help lead and guide, not maneuver and push someone into where you think it should be. And respect their choices. If they make the choice to go left, you say, okay, I'm with you. Let's see what it's going to do. Let's see how it's going to work out. But I'm here for you.
I think I like the question too. As I was going through and coming up with it, and it made me think about when I was in my 20s, right? And how I wanted to lead my life, or how what information I wanted from my parents, and so or asking from my parents. And so I thought about that, and I didn't have a lot of advice, but I did glean from some of the examples. I gleaned from um, what not to do and what to do, and that helped me, especially in these recent years, in how I navigate conversations and talk with my adult children. So I had to learn to step back, and I remember we're at a doctor's appointment for my son, who is legally blind, and his doctor was giving him some directives, and I was like, "Yeah, he gonna do this." He said, "No, no, no. He has to do it. You cannot do it for him." And so it made me think, right? Because I need to step back and allow him to make the decision. Because me saying I want it for him, I can want it for him all day long, but it's something he has to want as well. And so when I think about the directives and controlling, that is something that I have truly worked on. And and I think the thing that's helped me is when I see my adult children as my brother and sister, that helps me, because there's I use this as an example as one of the, I think something I shared on TikTok. There was when Jesus was talking to his disciples, and they said, "Your mother and your brother are out looking for you." And he said, "Well, who is my mother and who is my brother? Who are my sisters?" And so it made me think of how I have to interact with my children, my adult children. Now they're my brothers and sisters. So that's how I make sure that I give I'm careful of how I interact with them and the advice I give them if they ask for it. I try to make sure they're asking me for this advice, and I'm not just giving them what I want them to have.
Uh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna comment on something that Roland said, because I am one of those kids that, I will say kid, I'll be 45 next week, but I'm one of those adult children that I find my father's in a position of being very direct and giving instruction. And even though he's 83, I do kind of just, as an honor to him or respect to him, I just kind of pull that back, even though I am an adult, because I do understand that his direction really doesn't hold much weight way over here in Georgia, and he's in Virginia. But I just give him that moment to, be the father and give me directions. For me personally, with our relationship, his biggest thing is, you ain't got no boy in your face, right? And I always go, nope, I don't, Dad. I don't date. And he's like, good, because ain't nobody gonna be as good as you as your daddy, right? And so that's that parent-child little nugget that he has. He makes him feel good, right? But I do understand that he does recognize the fact that I'm an adult. I don't know if he necessarily sees me as that. I think he also kind of just still sees me as a little girl, but he respects enough of me to respect the decisions that I make with my life. And even though he doesn't like it, he has seemed to kind of simmer down a little bit about the way that he comes across. So I can't get him, if something is broken, I need to fix it or build it, or, I bought something. I can't quite get him there when it comes to giving directions as to how to put stuff together. He's still very much so directive and controlling, and I'm not doing it right, and it needs to be done this way. And I just kind of go, okay, well, how do I need to do it? Because it's, to me, when you pick your battles, that ain't the fight. I'm going to wage with him on that kind of stuff. But I do also understand that as a dad, he feels like he needs to tell me what it is that I need to do. And I do kind of take that step back to just listen, understanding that when I give him a hug and a kiss and I leave the state of Virginia, that what happens in Georgia and what happens under my roof is just what's going to happen. And every once in a while, he'll check up on me and he'll say, what did you do? And I'll say, well, I made the decision to do this. And he'll go, well, I didn't want you to do that, but that's your decision. And he will respect it that way. But it's just not the way he initially communicates with me. I think we kind of have a mutual respect and recognizing that in those moments he recognizes, oh, yeah, she is an adult, like she's a grown woman. But at the same time, he knows that I will give him the respect to let him do his thing and make him feel like the dad in charge without challenging that part of it. So it doesn't have to be a contentious relationship. But in real life, I'm listening to what it is that he says, taking it, heeding some of the advice that he gives, but ultimately it is my decision.
I'm kind of with you, but I'm not, because that's your father. But what he's doing is he's trying to control still as father, yet you 40 some years old. So you should be in that position to say, Daddy, you taught me right already. So trust me because you've taught me. Allow me to do this because I'm giving you this respect for this conversation because it could go a whole different way. And that's how my father would do me. I'm like, Daddy, I got grown kids and you still talking to me like I'm, so sometimes not that you disrespect them, but sometimes you have to check the checker to let them know, I got this. You taught me. I'm encouraged. I appreciate your guidance and be there in a different capacity rather than you hovering over me because now you're lording over me. And that's a position that you can't maintain right now.
I agree with that. I do respect that. I think it's 7 of us, right? So my oldest sister is 68 and I can't say that part out loud. I would say they're alike, but she'd kill me. But I think that I believe that you're correct. I think that they have more of a boundary set for him. So he kind of gets a little bit more shoved back from them. And I'm just a little bit easier, I guess, going just because the peace is the paramount part for me. But I do agree with you. I do think that there is a boundary that needs to be set. I'm not sure how to navigate that at 83. It's a weird dynamic because it doesn't really hold, I guess I could say. But I do agree with you. There does need to be a boundary set for that.
I'm liking the discussion, and there are so many comments in the chat. So I appreciate you guys. I want to just make sure you know that I appreciate you, and I hope this information is something that is beneficial. I think that for me, I'm learning in these moments as well, because there's some things that, we're all still growing. I think, as Nodella said, and striving to do this life a little bit better than we did, before, each and every day. So I'm grateful of these conversations because they help us learn how to really navigate being in relationships with our children, our parents as well. We think about what our parents as well. So yes, I'm thankful for. Oops, I'm sorry. Did I do that? Okay. I'm thankful for these conversations because they help us take our time to think about it and to make some adjustments if we need to make the adjustments in how we interact with each other. So I wanted to add that. Anyone else, before we move to the next question, anyone else have any comments about the last statements that Adrian and Dr. Phil? Did I say your name wrong? Poor man's Dr. Phil. Okay. So we're going to go to our next phase, for prayer and guidance as, being, I'm going to say advisors to our adult children. So question number 2 under prayer and guidance, if you don't mind. Okay. So the question is, how can we create an environment where our adult children feel comfortable asking mature questions and seeking guidance and support? And when I say mature question, I'm thinking, when our children, they think of us as just mom and dad, right? And not when they can come to us and ask us, questions that they may have conversation with their friends. Like my daughter, I used to tell her, you can ask me anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care what it is. And she would come up with the things I did not want to hear. And she would ask me, and I think she did it to test her boundaries, but I had to make sure that she said, well, you said I can ask you anything. And so I had to, suck it up. and still, this is still the dynamic of evolving and transitioning to being her advisor or giving her advice. and being her mom and not understanding that now she's an adult and now I have to have these adult conversations with her. So, is anyone else had any, comments to these questions? Please.
Yeah, I jump on this grenade first. So how can we create an environment where our adult children feel comfortable asking mature questions, seeking guidance and support, while stop telling them what we want them to do? That's for starters. I think a lot of times, and this kind of spins off of what we just previously talked about. A lot of times when our children make a decision and we turn around and say, well, I wouldn't have done that. What you're doing is you're degrading their decision-making probability in that moment. So now I don't feel empowered to come to you and share with you the next decision that I make. Also, we got to teach them how to ask great questions. We should have done that in their, their developmental phase. I think a lot of times when we have that foundation that says that children should be seen and not heard, that's a start of the problem. A foundation to where when they ask questions, we don't necessarily give them solutions to the answers, but we try to help them to figure out the solution or ask them another question on top of their question, right? So now we're teaching them how to ask better questions. So now when they become adults, they start asking great questions in life. And then when they become adults and start asking us questions, we don't shoot down the question that they ask, because now we're deterring them from coming back and asking questions later. We can do a better job with having conversations with them about the questions that they ask, and we can answer the question as they ask, but then ask them a question that says, well, did you think about this? Had you considered that? So now what you're doing is you're making them do linkage to their thoughts. And so at a later point in time, they're doing the mental analysis and say, well, let me ask Dad, like, if you were me in this particular stage, and these were the parameters that you had to deal with, what were some of the options that you would consider in making a decision? That would be a great question for a child to ask, because now not only are they thinking about the question, but you're making me think about your situation. So now I can give an answer according to your situation. A lot of times what we feel that guidance and support is guidance and support what it would have been like for me when I was their age. But guidance and support for me when I was their age is not guidance and support for them. So not only should the questions incorporate their lifestyle, but it also should incorporate this day and age and time as well.
I would share that I'm gonna be really transparent. I'm not sure what I did to provide an environment for my kids to be comfortable, but I think they are comfortable. I'm going to give credit to my mom for just being that parent that allowed us, my sister, myself, to ask questions, whether they were difficult or easy. She just kind of allowed us to feel free to speak about something that we were confused about or wanted to know more about. And I think because she was so open that way, that I pushed that, or I did that with my children. So now as adults, they ask questions. And what I would say that I continue to do is just be open. And I don't lead. I let them lead the question. I let them lead as far as how they want me to kind of interact with them with that. And if they ask for advice, I'll share this, I'll share that. Say kind of what Coach said, I just stay open to what they're asking me for. And if I feel that they're asking me to do it for them, maybe they're, feeling some kind of way, I will suggest, hey, did you ever check, a website that has some great information? I try to be information for them so that they don't get comfortable with, okay, well, mom will jump in and do it, because that's been my weak spot. That, okay, I'll help. I'll go ahead and do it, or I'll call them. So no, I'll just suggest, hey, why don't you call them and see what, options you have there. So that's kind of how I leave it open, that I just kind of stay quiet more so than I used to. That seems to have worked, but I can't really put my finger on it. And I'm just being honest. I'm not sure what I did, but I am grateful that they are comfortable, but I'm not really sure what I did specifically that made them that way.
I'm not saying this is your answer, but here's my response to this question. One of the best abilities that we can have as a parent is availability. Like when they call, do you pick up? If you don't pick up, do you call back or text back 3 days later? Like, do you call and reach out to try to have the conversation? One of the things that we as people in general, what determines the level that we're going to ask somebody questions is our relationship with them. If I don't have a good relationship with you, if whenever I call you're not available, then I may not be comfortable asking questions, because when it come time for me and I want to call my dad, and I call my dad and he don't never answer the phone, I'm just like, man, well, what do we have here? So I think the availability piece is really key in this portion, along with the other things that you said, and along with the things that Coach said. Like when you are interacting, are you telling them what to do, or are you there being supportive? So my response for the most part is being available will help create that relationship to where they can feel comfortable. And I also want to say this last little bit. I also want to create an environment where our children don't feel comfortable asking questions, but still do. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes we don't feel comfortable, but we still do until we get to a level where we are comfortable asking the question. So I want them to be able to come with the uncomfortable stuff as well.
Can I add real quickly to that to what you were saying? I also had to learn, and I'm speaking from a mom's point of view, that because we have daughters and we have sons, I had to understand that there were some questions that were not going to come in my direction, that they were going to go to my husband. And as a mom, I struggled with that, because I felt like, okay, we both need to know everything. Like, why he ain't tell me, or why she ain't tell me? But I had to learn that as they got older, that, oh, wait a minute, there are certain things that my son wants to talk to my husband about and share with him. He's very open, but I was like offended at first, like, why didn't you tell me that? But I got comfortable with that. But at first I kind of pushed back, because I felt like, oh, you're telling your dad, but you don't want me to know. I didn't say it out loud, but that's how I felt. But I think it's absolutely appropriate. And it was a hard lesson, but I think that's how he's been able to be more comfortable too, because I understand that some questions he may not want to. And it's not that he's not comfortable. It's just, I think this is a dad question. And my daughter might come to me and not say something to my husband. And then we deal with that accordingly. But yeah, I had to get out of my feelings with that. And I think with parenting, sometimes that's a huge lesson, that it's okay if they just didn't come to you. And I think Coach mentioned that in a previous question. If they don't come to you, they go to another source or another friend. You have to make that okay too, because they choose who their sources are just as we do. So
sometimes you may not want to have them conversations. Feel
That's
free
true.
to go talk to your mom about that stuff. I'm okay.
And Dr. Lisa, you ain't gonna keep taking all of me. I was going there. But I think that, as Coach was saying earlier, and I think just kind of to bridge that gap, because you got to allow from a young age them to get comfortable asking questions, get comfortable coming to you. You can't just expect you done shut them down their whole life every time they say, well, but why? But why? And because you didn't know, you shut them down. You got to get them comfortable at an early age, being asking the why questions. And if you don't know the answer, search it out together. Search it out to where you both got to do some work, to where it's not like because I said so or things like that. And I was going where you just went, Dr. Lisa, because, me with 5 daughters, it's some questions that they're not coming my way. Or if they do, I got to find them somebody, if it's not their mom, whomever it may be, that can answer their question, because I'm not wired to where I'm going to answer it properly, because I'm going to come from a man's perspective or a man's plane, or however they want to term it. So we got to make sure that we're not just running off at the mouth or just trying to be the do all and be all to their problems, but allowing them to be able to think and cognitively come together and reason within themselves to say, man, let me be the fixer of my problem and not me have to go to somebody else to where they got to fix it. I got to go to them. I got to go to them. No, you should be able to think. And then when you come to me, you've already thought about it. So I can let you talk and you can talk your way into whatever you're already thinking.
So I have to piggyback a little bit off of what Coach said in terms of, I say probably in the past 2 years that when my daughter do come to me, I do ask her, well, have you thought of this? Or did you, do your own research? One of the things that I'm really grateful for, again, as my daughter and I continue to get older, and I talk about me and my daughter a lot because, again, there's 10 years between her and the first boy. The boys are very easygoing, so this is why I talk more about my daughter. I have a really good relationship with the boys as well, so just to also clear that up. And they do reach out to me. But one thing that they know is when they reach out to me, and I have to say this, y'all don't laugh at me too bad. They do brace themselves when they reach out to me because they know that I'm not going to sugarcoat whatever my answer is going to be when it's a serious question. And if they know they're on the fence about what their decision may be, they know my stance, how I talk. Y'all know how I talk. I pretty much don't hold punches. I'm not trying to be offensive or even abrasive, but I talk that way partly because I just kind of want to bring across that when I respond, that this is where I stand. And unless you're presenting me with something to cause me to rethink what my stance, then that's my stance. But again, I'm just so appreciating and thanking God that my daughter has been reaching out to me more and more on topics, more so like in the space of relationships where she didn't before. I'm very careful with my response. Again, going back to Coach's point of, I listen first and I'll sit and think. And she's like, are you still there? I'm like, yeah, I'm just listening, because I don't want to be in the space of thinking that I always have to have the correct answer. My role in that moment could simply to redirect her to that answer. And most of the time I will redirect her to the one and only, and it's not me. I will say, okay, maybe this is something you should pray about. And most recently, she shared something she was dealing with. And I said, have you thought about maybe you might need to go on a fast, to get your answer? Because sometimes going on a fast, that means we got to put away all the other advice. We got to put away all the other distractions and distractors so that God can speak to us directly. And so that's kind of been my approach when my daughter does come to me, with whatever question is that I am trying to, again, to Coach's point, remove myself from the space of being the answer to all and the be all, because ultimately God is the answer to everything. And so I see that she is reaching out to me more. And I think it's because of me being more careful about my response and not just giving her a response and coming off as if I know everything. So, I'm really appreciating her trusting in me, even if I don't have the answer. I'm leaning more into that redirecting of more so to God than anything else. And I do agree with the Uncle Junior that yes, there are other sources, but we know that we have a connection to the source, and that's kind of how I deal with pretty much all of them.
Anyone else? Because we do have a question in the chat that Coach has starred, and I didn't want to go ahead and put that question up and see if we can answer this question. So, what advice would you give to someone that is having trouble approaching a parent that may not be acceptive or open-minded?
Prayer. I'm not going to go first because I'm in that seat, and I'm 56 years old, so I'm interested in what everybody has to say.
I think when it comes to approaching a parent, and you may feel uncomfortable because that dynamic is still, someone is not letting go of the role. Someone's not letting go of it. But in order for you to begin to bridge that gap, you have to have conversations. And I think that when you have conversations, and we always talk about this, set boundaries, because you have to do that with everyone, not just your friends, not just your mates, but everyone, because your boundaries are a part of your standards and ethics that you've set for yourself as well. That's a part of it. I'm not saying that's the whole of it. And so I think that when you need to approach someone and you need to have those, and the parent may not be open-minded, this is where you have the opportunity where you can say, well, listen, I'm asking you this information for, this reason, and I really truly want your advice as I don't know if the child would understand it, but I think that if you say to your parent, as my advisor, I think sometimes they need to understand that this is what I need you to be for me now. When you say that to them, I need you to be my advisor now, not my mom, not my dad, but my advisor, to help me to truly, whatever situation I'm coming to them with. I think that would be one aspect.
I think for me in this situation, we talking about a parent. So it's just like you tell your kids, life can teach you better than I can. I'm not about to sit up here and argue about a grown person to change. If they don't want to change, I can't make you. All I can do is be here, not to say I told you so or anything like that. But because sometimes they may thinking, oh, you just want your way to go. And they get stern because they see themselves losing a level of independence. So they want to be able to make this decisions for themselves. And sometimes you just got to step back and let the chips fall where they may.
So I want to add to when I said prayer, and I know I just said prayer and hop back off, but I say prayer because for me, it worked. Only God can help you to understand why this person is the way that they are. Not that we need to kind of go that deep, but if you are looking for them to be an advisor, you need to have some level of understanding of their resistance. And, to Coach's point, even earlier, he talked about, I know my parents, they didn't share a lot about their upbringing. It's definitely not the negative stuff or the bad experiences. A lot of the things they shared with me was positive things. They really didn't share a lot of negative things. And to Coach's point is that many of our parents, it could have been because of shame and embarrassment. And so we have to keep those things in mind as well, of why don't they, want to be acceptive, receptive, or open-minded. It's not necessarily even something to do with us. It's more than likely something to do with them. And I do hear Coach kind of in the background. So I'm just going to kind of, put it there in that we also, on the other hand, need to be open-minded as well and receptive equally as to why there may be a difficulty in approaching a parent, as to why they're also not being acceptive, receptive, or open-minded. So that's ultimately a two-way street in my book.
Can I say something before you go, Coach? Because I know
Sure.
you're gonna drop the hammer, right? I'm a bonus kid, and help me out if I understand it. I'm a bonus kid, so I am loved and appreciated and accepted by choice, not by responsibility. And I hold the relationship that I have with my bonus father differently than I would have if I would have had a natural parent. So if, for example, for this particular question, I didn't have an issue with having boundaries set for my mother because they were very clear and they maintained throughout my adolescence. If I had to come to her with a problem, she gave me the floor to get it all out before she even responded to me. But I don't have that same relationship with my bonus father. And I think as I read this question really good, I kind of treated it a little differently with kid gloves, because not that he would, but a real possibility is the relationship I have with him and the love and respect we have for each other to a certain degree is by choice. It's not by responsibility. He didn't see me grow up. He did, but he was not hands-on a parent to me. He was with his other children, and he has to me at 83 years old, he doesn't have the bandwidth to change that much. So for the relationship that we have, it's not deep. It's not so deep that he is an intricate part of my daily life, right? But we do have very loving and kind of kick glove relationship. He does help when it comes to, like I said, repairing stuff, and he does call himself giving a fatherly like tone to me. But at the end of the day, I understand that again, boundaries do need to be set, but they don't really weigh that heavy in my day-to-day life, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because it is a relationship by choice and not by responsibility. So I would like to hear Coach's answer to that, because if I would have had opportunity to have that type of relationship where I had a parent, a biological parent that took care of me and had a responsibility to me growing up, that they weren't that receptive or open-minded to any type of boundary, how would you approach that? Where as an adult, having a relationship with another person that it is by choice and not by responsibility, it could be a little different. I could be off by that, but that's just the question I wanted to ask before Coach answered.
I'm going to have to come back to that one because there's some certain dynamics. I don't want to confuse this question with that question. And I don't want to lump them together because there are certain dynamics here that are extremely different. To this particular question, though, I'm an advocate that there's only one way to get in the house, and you walk through the front door. I would never advise anybody to go around the house, go through the back door, go through the garage. No, go through the front door. If you have a parent that you feel is having trouble, that you have concerns with going to, because you don't think they're going to be receptive or open-minded, go straight to that parent and have an honest conversation with them. That's what I did with my dad. There was no beating around the bush. I asked a question. I say, can we talk? You and I, not me, you and your wife, you and I, because there's some things that we need to discuss because I want us to have a better relationship. And eventually, and he struggled with that for a little while, but eventually we got to that point to have that conversation. Now, did it happen as soon as I wanted to happen? No. However, the result of that conversation was a shared understanding. And that shared understanding has now gotten us to the point to where we have a more father-son-like conversation, more closer to what I'm looking for. I think when we take a passive approach to relationship building, then what we're doing is we're moving in the space of insecurity because I'm nervous. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want this. Sure, I'm agreeing with you. We have to honor our mother and our parents as children, but this is honoring them because I am seeking to have that relationship. Direct conversation is not dishonor. That's one of the things we got to get out of our head. Again, coming out of a stage to where, children should be seen, not heard. Children should not question what it is that I say. Why not? The system teaches you what to think. Do you want to perpetuate the system and you teach your child what to think? Do you not want to advocate to teach them how to think? So they should be able to ask questions about things that you say. And so when you see stuff like this, what you're hearing is the system created a mindset. My parent may have created a mindset that goes along with the system. And therefore, now, if I ask a question about what you say, I feel as though I'm being disrespectful. That's not disrespectful. We got to get out of that mindset. So don't be passive about it. Go straight to the parent and say, I need to talk with you because I got something very important that I think we would benefit from talking about. I don't have to set the conditions for how you move in your role. That's your responsibility. I don't even have to tell you who you're supposed to be to me. That's your responsibility. My responsibility as a child is to ensure that I honor my mother, my mother and my father. And in doing so, being able to have direct, honest conversation is a sign of maturity. It's not a sign of weakness. It is not a sign of disrespect. It is not a sign of any of those things. It is a sign of mature adult individuals coming together so that they can come to an understanding so that the relationship itself can flourish. So when I say it, and again, this isn't against what anybody else said, right? I want to make sure I'm saying it, but it is just so that, again, clear, concise guidance to somebody who may be asking a question that can be beneficial to their life moving forward.
I would like to add to that because that's always been my approach, to go directly in. I've tried it. It hasn't worked at times, but I'm also coming from a different perspective, being a grown woman, 56 years old, and still having that difficulty with the openness from a parent. But what I would like to add to this, because I absolutely agree, and I always say my mother never told me to go around Robin Hood's bush. I'm always going through the front door. Sometimes I'm not so welcome, but I'm coming in anyway. But what I would suggest and what I had to learn in even trying to approach this at an older age was that I had to work through my expectations. And if you're going into a conversation direct, just understand that if you have expectations that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, open arms are going to be there, that might not be the case. So what I had to do was make sure I understood that I was okay with whatever came from that direct conversation, which may not be what I wanted to hear. It may not be what I wanted to receive, but if I'm okay, then I'm ready to have the conversation. So I would just add, prepare yourself with that direct conversation, because what made it a struggle for me in the past was I had expectations about how this is going to be because I'm opening up. So I was all with the, the roses and rainbows, and that's not what happened. And it kind of set me back. So I would add to the direct, I agree with direct, and just prepare yourself for that direct conversation so that regardless of what response you get, you can continue to move forward and know that you've done what you could, and go from there. So that's what I would add.
And one other piece I want to add, if I can, I'm definitely agreeing with prayer, but keep in mind that prayer may be more so for you than it is for the outcome, because at the end of the day, you have to carry yourself in a respectful manner, right? And when I say respectful manner, I'm not saying that you don't have the ability to express yourself. I'm saying that you're praying, and part of that prayer is for you to govern yourself accordingly, according to that in which you align your life with. The outcome is what you're looking for, not change the way they do this, not change the way they do that, not change. That's their work. They have to do their own work on themselves, just like I have to do my own work on myself. So part of my prayer life is for me to always move in the direction of what he's called me to be. So that's the thing I'm saying when I talk about stuff like this as well, because what we like to do is we like to, well, God, I hope you change the way that you think. So no, they have their own responsibility. And in the midst of the relationship developing, what you're seeing now is two people who have taken responsibility of their life according to what they believe in, and then the relationship can come together. So I think that's key. Real quick, Adrian, with your situation, you're right. There is no, and I don't know the dynamics, and I don't want to pretend. I'm just going to kind of go along with what you just said. It's not by responsibility, it's by choice. And so in the midst of that, there has to be a clear definition of what that relationship is, what that relationship looks like, and where the responsibilities lie. A relationship with no responsibility is not a relationship. I will start there. Every relationship has responsibilities, so we need to understand what that looks like. That's why I say I can't really say because I don't necessarily understand. I'm only going by what I heard you say. You said you call him your bonus dad, which is cool. So it sounds like he's taking you in as a daughter, but not necessarily him being that father. Well, that's great, which means in the midst of that, where's the lines of responsibility? What does that look like? How do we operate within this space so that I don't violate you and you don't violate me? And then the other side to it, I will also add and inject is that if this is what our relationship is, then going back to what you said previously, well, that's not what I would want you to do. Well, you're not my dad, right? You don't have, that's not your responsibility now. You see what I'm saying? So if we have clear cut responsibilities, then that kind of makes it more clear in how we can behave within that space. Even my dad don't tell me what he don't want me to do. That's not your decision to make, right? And so that was part of, the conversation that he and I had to have. And I put it, I don't care. He wanted to pray for something I had already moved on from. That's not your responsibility. I pray that this happens. Why are you praying for something that I'm not actively moving towards? Should what you pray for when it comes to me also fall in the line of what his will is and what I'm planning on doing with my life? So now there's a separation here. So that's what I mean when I say lines of responsibility. If we understand the lines of responsibility, it teaches us how to behave in relationship. Therefore, now we can have a honest, cohesive, and fully functional, harmonious relationship.
All right. And that makes sense, prayer and especially for, the mothers, we're praying, and we have to make sure that while we're praying, I'm actually doing now, being mindful of how to pray and making sure that I'm doing it in God's will. And I wanted to reiterate with Amari, I think that's how you pronounce her name, everyone for answering this question. Thank you so much for taking the time to, this is what this is all about. Coming together, helping us grow together, and to help people come to understanding and make some better decisions, in their life. We can do that together as a community. So I do appreciate everyone for responding to the question and answering the question. And I hope it was helpful. I really do. So we're going to go to our closing remarks. And let's do it in this manner. If Miss Adrian, Miss Nodella, Mr. Garfield, Miss Lisa, and Dwayne, and I will close us out. If you don't mind. In that order.
You forgot Dr. Phil.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I'm a little upset.
I forgot. Who did I forget?
You said Adrian, Sister Nodella, Garfield.
I forgot. Oh, I forgot. Did I forget? I'm sorry. Okay. After Lisa, after Dr. Lisa, Dr. Phil, I'm sorry. So all these doctors on here, Dr. Phil. And then the mindset coach and myself.
Gotcha.
Today's been a really, really good conversation. I did truly enjoy it. I do know that parenting is a big responsibility, and just not one that the Most High saw for my life, and that's okay. I do appreciate the people that He have put into my life to lead and guide me. I appreciate the parents that He did give me, because I think He did a great job as far as giving them the knowledge to guide me thus far. Long journey ahead. This journey into walking this life is not easy, nor is it perfect, and it pricks you emotionally. Definitely did me. But we're all learning, and we are all growing. And with that, have a wonderful evening, and until next time.
I agree with my sister Adrian. Today's conversation was a great conversation. I want to leave with you one of our points, and that is building relationships with your adult children. We need to understand that we both are continuously growing. And so even in a space where we may have either once agreed or disagreed, as we continue to grow, mature, develop, and become more knowledgeable and educated, those things can actually flip-flop. On topics where we once agreed, we may not agree at this point. Where we once disagreed, we may now agree. It's very important that each of us is fluid and flexible in the development of our relationship if we want it to continue to grow and if we also want it to remain in a healthy place. And so for me personally, it has truly been a learning curve with my daughter as well as my sons on not just being a parent, but recognizing that now I've moved into a place of perhaps being an advisor. And I do find myself more so now than ever, my children reaching out to me for advice. So I feel more of an advisor. But in that place, we must make sure that we are being mindful that we are talking to another adult, even though they may be our child. And so as we continue to seek out to have a better relationship with our adult children, as I said, prayer definitely is a key component. Not so much that we want the outcome to be the way we want it to be, but for myself personally, I often ask Holy Spirit, what am I not seeing? Because we all do have blind spots. And so my desire is to be more open-minded and to ensure that I am also an effective listener as well as an effective communicator.
Man, I'm looking at the title again, and the title is called Parenting Beyond the Nest, Part 2. That means that there's a Part 1. So first of all, make sure that you go back and watch Part 1. Now, for my closing remarks, I want to focus on the relationship. Before we can advise, before we can teach, before we can mentor, before we can do any of these things as parents, the relationship piece has to be there. So my closing remark is that we need to focus on the relationship that we have with our adult children. You know, as they age, as we age, do we really want to be in our 70s and 80s and not have a good relationship with our children? You know, we don't know where some of us may find ourselves. We may find ourselves, I see people all the time who don't have good relationships with their children, and now they're in nursing homes, and because the kids didn't want to deal with them because they didn't have good relationships. So I think that it's important, you know, as we grow older, you know, and for some cases in our own benefit, it's always better to have a good relationship with someone versus having a sour relationship with them. And this means specifically with our children. You know, I specifically and personally want to have a great relationship with my kids, with my adult kids. I want them to want their kids to want to go and see Pop Pop. You know, I want the relationships that they have with, you know, different people. I want them to want to be around me when I'm gonna get older and stuff. So I just think that it's important that we continue to build on this relationship and let that be one of the biggest priorities versus the mentorship, the leadership, and all of these other things that we're going to do. I think it's very important to continue to build and have that relationship that's effective and that can, you know, move y'all forward, you know, as we, you know, get older and older in this thing called life. That's my closing remarks.
Well, first of all, I absolutely love this topic, and I think it's something that can continue. I know this is part 2, but I could see a 3, 4, 5. I relate to this entire conversation as a child, as a parent, as a Gigi or grandmother, This is all good information. I thank everybody for everything that they have poured into this live, because I've learned a lot. And what I would suggest is to stay open, be flexible, and manage your expectations. Those are the things that have helped me and to guide me through, because I am an example of still the struggle, even as an older parent, and having a parent that is still a difficult conversation. But I am all for going through the front door. And that's why I say stay open, manage your expectations, be flexible, and understand that to what Sister Nodella said, that the prayer is that you are able to have the strength to handle the conversation, and don't expect anything except the fact that you did what you needed to do, and life continues. So I'm looking forward to actually part 3 or part 4. I don't know if Lisa's up to it, but I have absolutely enjoyed this and learned a lot. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
First of all, I want to thank the Hearts of Women for the invitation. I want to thank my brothers in the chat for joining in and responding. And when it comes to this topic, this is near and dear, because as a parent and as a son, this is something that I strive to become better at as I continue to grow. So I think that we should have such a relationship with our children that we have open communication, and it's a norm, and that when it's time to switch hats, that we can take off the hat of mentor and just be a listener. We can take off the hat of being that advisor. We can just continue to grow our relationship, so that the relationship always is of the most importance, because that's what we have. Because we can have arts with one another, we can have disagreements, but if we continue to grow the relationship, we know what to expect from you, and it becomes the norm and not just something that happens. Oh, well, they're up and down and they have this way about them. No, if I say I'm dad, I don't care whether it's, some of us have godparents or whatever. So that means I'm leading you in a certain direction. And that's the role that I will continue to play, whether it's from birth or whatever. I'm still in that role, but there may be a shift because of mental capacity. So when it comes to parenting, I always look to how can, at this stage in life, how can I continue to mentor? How can I continue to grow the relationship and accept my responsibility as parent?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And like Roland just said, thank you to the Hearts of Women for having us, and thank you for everybody. Thank you to everybody who actually joined us during this conversation. The reason why I love this conversation, because there's a lot of unknowns. A lot of times we just don't know what we don't know. And unfortunately, during the stages of parenting, which is what I kind of relate to it, we don't know what we don't know. So like I said previously, the parent is teaching the child, but the child is also teaching the parent at the same time. I think everybody has to understand, or should understand, the stages of child development. That kind of helps you to understand how you can best serve your child as they're growing and developing. Within the idea or the concept of child development, a lot of us need to understand that we ourselves need to go back through a lot of those stages as well, because there's some things that we missed. There's some things that we didn't get. So as I'm ushering my child through the stages of child development, I also must go through some of the stages of child development so I can be a more mature adult for my child as they get to the point of maturing through different transition points. Now, that brings into the point of those transition points. Where have they matured from a young adolescent to a more older adolescent, so forth and so on? Because what they need from you then is different. It's like seeing an adult go to the bowling alley and getting an 8-pound bowling ball and just fling it down the lane at about 90 miles per hour. What you don't understand, you abuse. And so a lot of the times what we don't realize is that ultimately we sometimes abuse our children, not from the traditional sense of abuse. We're just saying that we didn't necessarily understand parenting. So we had no other choice but to abuse them. And then as they got older, they had to mature and grow out of those things. Now that leads them to a point as an adult where they need to come back and have a conversation with us, because they got some things that's deep within them that they really want to talk about and want to share with you, but we're still stuck in our parenting roles to where my child dare not say anything to me that I deem as being disrespectful. That's the thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about how do both parent and child grow and mature in the space to where they get to the point to where they can have harmonious relationships from the point that the child comes out of the womb to the point that the child becomes a grandparent themselves. It is still available to have those relationships. So it's necessary for us to understand these things. It is necessary for us to have honest and open conversations with one another, child to parent, parent to child, so that you can be better equipped for that grandchild and that great grandchild that is to come. And that's my final thought.
Thank you so much for your final thought. And a lot of things that you said, the mindset coach, I was thinking of adding, but you said a lot of them already. But the transitioning role, I think one of the things that really sticks out to me is that just as the role of guardian changes, you know, we're their guardian. When children mature, parents also transition from being authoritative figures to advisors as their children grow. And that's one of the things that I had to write down to remember, to remind me that this is a constant evolving and growing, as was stated in some of the final thoughts. And so we have to make sure that we're mindful of that and model that behavior. You know, we have to model the behavior. And the parents have to be conscious and demonstrate the values when the children are younger, demonstrate these values and that they want to impart into their children. And that reinforces how they're going to perceive and how they're going to walk away and begin to start their life as they grow and become mature and as adults. They are looking at our examples. And so I'm so thankful to have this conversation, because there's so many things that I'm learning and growing in and maturing in. And it's helping me have more fruitful and more healthy conversations and relationships with the people in my life. So I'm so thankful for that, to be able to have these conversations and have this platform. I don't take it for granted. And I'm so thankful that we came together and that, and I hope that this conversation was beneficial to everyone who took part of it in the chat, on the panel, and that we continue to have these conversations that help us, provoke us to think and to grow and to continue to do good work. So I just wanted to say that. And thank you guys again. Is there any final thoughts? I'm going to ask Coach, the mindset coach, do you have any final thoughts before we leave?
All hearts and minds are clear.
All hearts and minds are clear. Okay. I just wanted to ask you because you know, I wanted to ask you that question because I know you are, you know, for the hearts of men. So I wanted to ask you, I didn't want to belabor the point for everyone. So I didn't want to leave anyone out. But I also want you guys to be mindful that we're going to continue to be there on Friday nights for the Hearts of Men, to continue to support you. We're going to, we have other events coming up this weekend. So we have, we go live on TikTok. We also are, we have our Bible studies on Sundays at 2 p.m. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had that information as well. And if you guys want to join them, please go to the mindset. Give me the address for the website, because I can't remember it right now.
It's,
I think I cussed, but I did not cuss.
look at that. www.totalmindsetshift.com/groups. Again, shift.com/groups. I heard what I heard. That's all I'm saying.
Whatever. But please go to that website. You'll get all the information, notifications. Anytime something comes up, you will be you will have all of our links to the events, our online events that we are doing. And you guys come be a part of the community. We have a lot of conversations like this, and we are growing and we are learning. And I'm so thankful that you guys took part in it. Thank you so much for participating. And until next time.